Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion. I'm your boy at George V underscore AFC. We're back with another review. I hope everyone's doing well. What a game. That was a really thrilling kind of game. I'm not sure I'm in love with our control of the game, but these are moments. And there's sometimes that there's a time to talk about tactics, and then there's times that you just want to talk about emotions and what it could mean for title races, for future, and how things just make you feel, because that could possibly be the best Emirates moment that we've had while there. Period. I don't think I've seen, a kind of a reaction like that in any other game in a moment. So that was phenomenal to see. Hopefully, we do it under better circumstances coming in the future. But current mate, how you doing? You good?
Just about recovered, to be honest. I mean, I was there,
Mm.
so that's the main reason we did the preview, guys. I was there, and I think the guys just couldn't get a time together to do the preview. But yeah, what a game, eh? Just madness from minute 1 to minute 97. Just
Mm.
complete and utter, like the way the game swung, the changes in build-up shape, as you've mentioned, in when we talked off air, the adjustment in roles. So much to talk about tactically, so much to digest, just emotionally, tactically, and just just even just health wise. Like we're talking about ESR being fit here. Obviously, you've got the injuries to Trossard and Jesus to discuss as well. There's a lot of going on, so yeah, a lot to discuss, a lot to break down. And it, like I was on a gal earlier, and we were talking about how the uh, the narratives of this and the narrative and that. But I just feel like um, there's a lot of just plain like meat to get into with this game. There's a lot to get into. There's not just like a it's not a normal game, because I feel like tactically there was almost an evolution mid game that I don't think we've seen in a lot of these games going back to maybe even a couple of years now. I feel like there's this reinvention of Partey's role. I think, especially in the second half, where he was a bit higher. I think it shows where we're going in the future as well. Hint, hint, knock, knock. But I just think there's a lot to break down in terms of patience, over verticality at times, as well as not being vertical enough at times, if that makes sense. The introduction of an actual wide outlet for once, and not leaving lane 5 completely isolated, and actually having someone in the second half in Reece Nelson able to stay wide, beat his man, produce a cross, and obviously produce that moment of magic at the end. So I just think there's so many things to break down, because just just from what we've just said on the streams for the past couple of weeks where we've been struggling, that lane 5 is so crucial in stretching the pitch, keeping the pitch wide, not allowing narrow blocks to have the advantage, because they have to be drawn out. You have to create the spaces, the 2-on-1s and the 3-on-2s if you want. There's a real propensity to have that dynamic on the left side as well, because we have obviously Bakayo and then the Ben White overlap. To have that on the left hand side is going to be so crucial in the run in, and it could be a turning point, not because of the emotional side of it, but the tactical side. Actually showing Mikel, look, you need to have someone in that lane. You
Well, I
can't
think
not
it's
have
a
it.
bit more, right? Because it's what teams have been responded to us doing in terms of doubling up on our wingers. And
Mhm.
look, I've talked about this for years, not just on Twitter, but in terms of my actual footballing philosophy at 2-2-6. It was lovely to see it in game in terms of what we actually did in the second half to kind of achieve that. And I've always said to people, I really believe that the 2-2-6 is a formation that's coming. It's going to be a response to a lot of positional teams, and you need to look out for it, and you need to look out for that kind of additional player that's going to be that versatile forward that can operate in multiple zones. And we saw it kind of in this game, and there was a lot to dissect with that. In terms of like how our goals have been conceding, we've had a lot more transitions, almost twice as much transitions from pre-World Cup to post-World Cup. So why is that happening? There's growing pains of that box midfield. If you've been an avid watcher of the channel, you know that the 2-2-6 is made up of a box. And so I do think that there's some things that the team is learning to adjust to, but it's also trying to combat with kind of injuries to the front line that we've had to change a little bit of things around. When we talk about Emile Smith-Rowe and kind of Reece Nelson in terms of what was the difference maker there, there's a couple reasons why Reece worked and the ESR didn't. And a lot of it relates to Zinchenko and Fabio Vieira being on that same sides and how we talk about what pods are complementary to each other. But I do agree that I think with everything going on, we got good news with Trossard in terms of kind of the injury update. I did try to tell people, at least in group chats, that were really worried. It could be grade 1 or it could be grade 2. It really
I
depends
just
on kind of the
just
scan.
quickly on the Trossard thing. I didn't even see him pull up. All I saw, because I was in the clock end, I was focusing on the free kick. And we were down, so I was like, just get the free kick, get the free kick, and then all of a sudden
Yeah,
you
no,
see
I
like
wasn't I
Trossard
wasn't
pull up.
worried. Yeah, because there was no real action that really caused him to maybe pull up.
The
So I
only thing
always
that
thought it
worried
was
me
going to
was
be a
the
grade 1.
non-contact. When you just get those pull-ups, and it's just like, that's it.
It can be scary because when you do pull up without contact, you do worry for something more serious in terms of a tear.
Yeah,
But when just so everybody does know, the fact that they had good news means that the scan came back negative to a tear. So you can almost guarantee it's a grade 1. And from that point on, it's 7 to 10 days. Groins are a little bit finicky, so it could be 2 weeks maximum, but it's not a long-term thing. And again, the international break is coming at a right time. I completely agree because then you've got Gabriel Jesus. It's going to be integrated well. Reece and ESR will be integrated well as well, and you start to have a much fuller looking squad. Really, Eddie Nketiah is probably the only unknown in terms of the severity of his injury coming back, whether it's short term or long term. But beyond that, I do think that this team kind of gave you a lot to love about that game, but also not a lot to love. We have to be fair. But I do think that if you do have kind of a rewatch on the game, Bournemouth were suffocated a lot more than people think. I think the amount of touches that we had in Bournemouth's penalty box was absolutely insane. And so a large part of that was due to the second half performance. But we've gone a long time without basically welcoming Mr. Took himself. Chris, how you doing, mate? You good?
Don't know what that word. I don't know what that word means, but I am good. Nice, not nice to win like that, but it's nice to win.
Mhm.
Other teams don't experience that. Like we don't 5 goals in our game and we didn't concede all of them, so it's happy days for us. What 12 games left? People are saying 12 finals. Conceded
it's
the
too soon for the finals talk.
nah. It isn't. I don't. It is,
I
but
think post international break, then you can start getting into last 10 games, 10 finals. Let's
but
get it. But
it's weird to concede the second fastest goal in Prem history, and then to score
I just sat down, man.
the second latest winner I was even looking at the screen when the
I
goal
just
went.
sat down, legit. I came out from because I was up at 2 o'clock, and I just sat down because it was like a family in front, and they all just sat down, and it was almost in the back of the net by the time they sat down. I was just like, Jesus Christ.
Well, you know what, guys? The first thing that we'll probably talk about is I want to get through the emotion of the game in terms of what you guys felt and whether or not this could be something that we could draw inspiration from, or whether or not we should be worried. So, look, there's two kind of narratives. You've got the Gary Neville opinion, which is that you've conceded quite a bit of chances recently in games. And, I'll go to Chris first, and then I'll have a different question for Curran. But do you believe that some of the transitions that we've been conceding or the way that we've come back twice is a positive or a negative? Because there's been two kind of perspectives where should you be letting Bournemouth of all teams in terms of their away performance, in terms of who they are, second last in the league, should you be allowing them to kind of go 2-0 up on you and through quite easy goals and some individual mistakes? And or is the fact that we've come back and had a certain inevitability about us scoring the benefit that you should be drawing from this game? Like, where do you stand on balancing the fact that we've given very easy goals away versus the fact that we've shown a lot of mentality to kind of come back? And a lot of the concerns people have for the title race is mentality and experience in comparison to City, right? Like, I don't think there's too much of a quality gap. People might argue on the depth and whatnot. And there is certainly a goal scoring gap between City and Arsenal. But for the most part, a lot of people talk about how City will put a run together. Do you get scared with Arsenal giving up these amount of chances in this game, or do you think it's more a fact that we've held our nerve, we've kept our principles, and we were able to come back against low blocks 2 times in a game, and we showed a lot of character? Like, where do you stand on it?
Well,
You go.
yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's overall negative. because you do come back. We have 15 points from losing positions in the league. Before this season, we only came back from down one time in the whole of Mikel's tenure. So it is a big change from last season, the seasons before. But I think the experience of being down is something we've experienced for 3 years now. These players have kept going down, trying to learn how to adjust in game, trying to develop. I think it's a positive to go down and continually come back versus whoever it may be, versus Fulham, Bournemouth, United. It could be any team. We were able to come back, but it is negative, obviously, to concede in 9 seconds. But it's better to concede in 9 than 79 and then have 10 minutes to come back rather than 90. But it is poor that we're conceding chances a lot more now than we were earlier in the season. But at some point, you will concede chances. You can't go 38 games being a perfect defense. There was always going to come a period where we were going to concede goals, be a bit more complacent, and I think a bit more risky. I think we trust our defense a lot more. We trust our three, our Ben White, our Saliba, our Partey, and Gabriel to defend transitions a lot more, like compared to the start of the season. So I think the whole team knowing what they are now compared to the start of the season was always going to come with more chances, I think, because City concede the chances in transition we do now, just from being a bit more risky and having more men forward.
And we're going to talk about transitions as its own separate segment because we have to. I've alluded to it at the beginning with the box midfield and kind of some of the tactical changes that we do. I do feel that there's growing pains. So we'll talk about that kind of in the next segment. But Curran, mate, for you, the first thing is talk about the emotion of what you felt in the stadium, because I feel as though that there are moments in a season, there's things that you look back on. You know, I myself couldn't catch the game live because I had work and I got called in. And so, which sucks. And I was really pissed about it. But, you know, I did kind of tweet afterwards, like there's a time for tactics and there's a time for emotion. Just enjoy it. And you know, what Chris said is important. You know, we've recovered more points from losing positions more than any not more than any team in the Premier League this season. We've recovered 15 points. That's the definition of mentality. Like when you start talking about what is the mentality of a championship winner, it's recovering points from losing positions. It's making sure to hold your nerve. It's making sure that you are keeping the principle. You're not changing too much of what you're doing. You're still keeping what's made your special sauce important, the press. Like, I think we've answered a lot of those critiques in terms of injuries. Can the squad handle an injury-ridden season? In the last 11 games, when you've had no Jesus, we've managed to continue to keep a 5-point gap with Manchester City from the beginning of January when we really lost Jesus. In comparison to now, we haven't sacrificed a lead despite losing one of our main attacking pillars. Like, when you start to look at it and then you experience what you did in the stadium, like, talk about, did that feel like a watershed moment for you as like a fan going? Like, we talk on this channel a lot about tactics and stuff, but what was it like actually being there in the stadium to experience that? And would you rank that as the best Emirates moment in terms of noise? Like, I'm trying to think. Welbeck, I don't think it was that loud.
No.
But that's the only
Arshavin.
equivalent one, maybe the Arshavin, you know, moments. Like, those are two moments that come to mind. But is this up there with the best Emirates moment?
For me, I mean, I wasn't at the Arshavin game, and I wasn't at the Welbeck game, but it's the best moment I've ever experienced in a stadium. I mean, my body is still sore. Let's put it that way. Everything hurts. You're just hugging random people, meeting up with people that you know at the ground. Literally, I was with AFC Evan, and he was in the block next to me, and we ran out into the into where they get the concessions and just gave each other a massive hug. And there's moments like that you don't forget those moments. It was surreal. It was poignant because it just felt like that before that corner. It just felt like it had gone. Like, I remember saying to the bloke next to me, "That's going to be a draw, isn't it?" Literally before the corner was going to be taken, because I couldn't. That was the only moment where I lost hope, was that moment. I don't know what it was, but it was just that last moment. I was like, it's just gone, isn't it? And then Reece takes it down, and here's history. And then just hugging random strangers, screaming. literally at the top of your lungs for a good 5 minutes. you
No,
don't
it's insane. Look, I think
you
it's
can't
been
put
up
it into
there.
words, but you just can't. It's just
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Like,
and the emotion of it is absolutely incredible. And as a fan, like when we're going through these title run moments, I do find that there's a lot of fans on Twitter right now that are almost result pocket watching, where it's like they're not allowed to be emotional or happy for a journey unless you get a win. And I'm finding a lot of people in game, if you don't score in the first 5 minutes or the first 20 minutes, or if you get a goal conceded, people are saying it's shit, we're this, we're
mm.
that. And it's very results based analysis where from here,
The only way I can put it into words is, I don't know if you remember At All or Nothing, the North London derby. I don't know if you remember on the pitch where Stuart McFarlane guy, the photographer, gives Arteta a hug at the end of the game. That image is kind of, it sums up what that it felt like in that moment. Like, just that raw emotion, just relief. It was indescribable. It was, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It's just a moment of just sheer relief. And let's just talk about that goal for a second, though. Like, weak foot, the ability to just take it on the half volley.
well, no, I'm gonna cut you off. We're gonna get to the goal. Like that's the
Like,
last part of the
just
podcast. We can't talk about the goal at the beginning. Okay, we're gonna get to that. But look, it's like you said. It's absolutely insane in terms of an emotional standpoint, and I think that you're gonna look back on this as like a
I was
watershed
shaking
moment.
for about 15 minutes. Let's put it that way. The adrenaline was crazy.
It was incredible. It was the last minute of the game, and it just had to be at a point when, by the way, we felt hard done by officials. Like we're going to talk about that on the podcast in terms of handballs and all the shouts. It came from a place of frustration and then relief, and I just think that's the up and down that sport's all about. So, without further ado, enough of the emotional crap. You're here for the tactics. You're here to discuss what went wrong at the beginning, and I'll set it up. And we'll have a discussion on the transitions because, Chris, I did want to ask you what you felt some of the issues were. I've talked about this growing pain of a box midfield, but we can maybe quickly go over the first goal. I think it is purely a case of just poor lapse in concentration, and that's about it. It is the second fastest goal, as you said, in Premier League history, and so it's not really something that you have a lot of tactical understanding for. The one thing I will say is that Bournemouth did catch us out in terms of underloading our side. So when they do switch to the right, our left-hand side, we have quite a bit of amount of people cheating. So Fabio Vieira, along with Martin Odegaard, are on the right-hand side with Bukayo Saka, right? And it's only really Martinelli and Zinchenko that are kind of on the left-hand side to start with. There is encroachment, by the way. I don't want to be an asshole, but like if you're really going to go back to it, VAR should have gone
Well,
back.
no, there
It
was
was
quite clearly
offside.
encroachment.
I'm not offside, sorry. It was in our half. It shouldn't have counted. But
I know there's encroachment into our half, so it's ridiculous. It shouldn't have stood. But regardless, I do think it was smart that Bournemouth did pick up on the fact that we didn't have enough people on the left-hand side. Like, and it seems like a training ground routine. It's a quick switch out wide, and then Billing is crashing the box. As they send in a very dangerous cross, and Thomas Partey doesn't follow Billing in, and boom, goal, quick 1-0. And I think it's the worst way to potentially start a game. Although I'll ask you, like, do you think that's maybe the case? When you score that early, does it really make a difference on the game? I do feel like it's almost worse if you have like another 20 minutes of play and then you score, as opposed to maybe scoring within the first seconds. It gives you an opportunity to really make up that way. But what did you feel kind of on the first goal itself, ignoring the encroachment? Because I think that's ridiculous. But
well, like I said earlier, it's like for us, it's 90 minutes. You just obviously you start with a handicap, but for us, it's still 90 minutes. For them, it changes their game plan completely. It's like giving them an advantage. Start 1-0, and you have to defend. You have something to defend. So they sat in their box for 90 minutes. Like till we scored the second goal, they really sat in their box. They didn't even try to progress the ball at all. They were just clearing it clearing it to Solanke. But on the goal, it was Gabriel tried to intercept it and it bounced to Billing. Like they're probably one of the best starters in the league. It's not the first time they've scored from kickoff this season. I think it's the third or fourth. So they do have good kickoff routines, and we just got caught out by one. There's not really much to say. You just got caught out, and you go again. Really, like you shouldn't concede that early, and you shouldn't give that much space to two runners in the box. But There's not much else you can say.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's move on to kind of even the second goal. I'll stick with you, Chris, because it's still on the thing of transitions, and we'll get Curran's opinion on it. But I'm looking at this game and I'm seeing a lot more of a 2-2-6. We've talked about this so many times in the past. It's something that I know, it's something I've always wanted. It's my subjective preference, but you could really see it in this game having this kind of box midfield. But one of the things that we've sacrificed as a result to kind of committing Ben White forward a lot more in terms of the wide overlap is that what you do is you leave yourself open to this kind of transitions in the middle of the park. And I do think that there's some growing pain that's happening with this team in terms of adjusting to that box midfield. And, for the second goal around, the 20th minute mark, I think it's like in the 19th minute. But again, Bournemouth break with pace. We kind of lose a foul at the top of the box with Martin Odegaard rushing back. And I don't think that Thomas Partey and Saliba can win their duels between the both of them. And ultimately, it's kind of Billing that.
Do you mean a chance?
The chance, yeah, the Ramsdale chance. Sorry, not the goal. And
wasn't it offside? I heard later.
It was offside. It was debatable in terms of the offside from the Billing release, but what wasn't debatable was the fact that Billing tore through the kind of middle of the park. That was onside. He makes the run from the inside of the half. The release is potentially offside, but from there, I wanted to ask you, what did you feel about Aaron Ramsdale's save? Because that was phenomenal. He's been very underrated, not just this season, but for a while now. Aaron Ramsdale has been in incredible form. And despite it being maybe arguably offside, whether you want to argue semantics, I don't really care. I'm more upset at the transition, how Billing can tear through you like that. That's ridiculous to me. You shouldn't be allowed to do that, whether it's offside or not from his pass into the box. Debatable, but you can't be allowing teams to run through the middle of the park like that. I think Thomas Partey has to be a little bit more aggressive. And, William Saliba has to make a decision to bite or not. And I think he delays a bit in terms of the response to that. But what did you make kind of the chance and then maybe Aaron Ramsdale's, save? Because it was phenomenal. I think Allison is probably the only other keeper kind of in the league that gets that right 9 times out of 10 in terms of his ability to come out or not. Like his judging of 1v1 opportunities is absolutely immense. And I just think Aaron Ramsdale there, he's solving a weakness. It's not something that he's been great at in the past. I think him being a sweeper keeper, he's always misjudged the timing of when to go out sometimes, but gets it spot on here. And it's a huge point in the game. Even if it was offside, the confidence that it gives you or your team in your defense that your keeper is able to do that is absolutely massive. What did you think on that kind of Ramsdale chance?
Well, it was first of all very good run by Solanke. Odegaard tried bump him and he just rode the challenge. He kept going, played a through ball to Billing, and then you're right. I think Saliba should have committed a lot earlier because Trossard tried to come across, and I thought that was a bit silly, but he's not really a defender, so he didn't really know how to assess the situation. But if a centre back or a fullback was there, they probably don't come as close as Trossard did and try to block the passing lane off because Trossard only saw the ball. He forgot about the 2 men at the back post, and I don't blame him. He's a left winger striker. He's an attacker, so I don't blame him for misjudging it. But it's a very poor transition to concede, especially in the 19th minute, that early in the game.
It probably be leggy.
It probably isn't offside, but you shouldn't be leggy. You shouldn't allow that. And we did have men back. Saka was back. Odegaard lost the battle with Solanke, so he stopped running.
Try not to say that and smile. Try not to say that and smile.
Well, he lost the battle with Solanke and he stopped running. But it was a great save, innit? Like, he should score. He shouldn't. That's why Solanke was angry at him. He should score that. Semenyo should 100% score that. But it was a great save from Ramsdale. As you said, he has been getting a lot better with that because I remember versus Liverpool, for example, Jota chipped him when he tried to come out for the 1v1. So he has gotten a lot better at that. And Alisson probably is the best in the world at judging that. But again, it's just a poor transition. Like, we should do a lot better to not allow 2 men to break on the right-hand side alone. Like, no one tracking them, allowing Billing, who's a left-foot player, to make an easy pass. So it's just silly mistakes that we can easily fix. And Trossard shouldn't be the one there. Like, if you look back in the corner, Trossard shouldn't be the one to challenge that because, again, he made the wrong decision. But I don't blame him.
Yeah, no, and Kern, I'll go to you. Like, what do you think is some of the issues with some of the transitions that we're noticing? Because it wasn't just here, by the way. It was
Mm.
Villa where we misjudged the transition quite a bit, allowed them to really carry almost 15, 20 yards unopposed. Our defensive lines weren't 100%. There has been a little bit of an issue in terms of Arsenal controlling the middle of the park right now. And it's not so much the defense. Like, I feel that we've overworked our defense quite a bit. We ask a lot of them. They're high and wide consistently. They're exposed constantly. They deal with it because they're excellent at what they do. But our organization in terms of making the foul is poor. Like, we do have to learn when a person carries for more than 10, 15 yards in the middle of the park, you do have to make a foul. You do have to commit. Like, you can't let them travel for so long unopposed. And whether that's Villa, whether that's Solanke right now releasing Billing, it's just not something that we want to continue doing. And I did want to say, prior to the World Cup, we were offering something like one and change per 90.
1.08 versus 2.16 is the stat you want.
Well,
Yes. Well, exactly. I was about to kind of go through that, but yes, we are doing
That's
double
exactly
the
because I was
amount
about to
of
bring up the same stat.
transitions. Yeah, we're doing double the amount of transitions post World Cup. So it's not just an isolated moment of just Villa or just Solanke.
But
We
we're
are
creating
absolutely.
transitions. This is the point. This is the point where this is so key, George. I think what a lot of people are missing, and I'm seeing it a lot on Twitter as well, is that we have the whole point post World Cup for me, I think, has been how do you solve a Gabriel Jesus hole? How do you do that? We've tried different modalities. We've tried obviously the Eddie route, shaping our whole attack around him. We've tried obviously Trossard and the false nine is some people. I don't think it's a false nine. It's just a free forward role that he's had. But the main point is I think what Jesus offers and what I think we're missing so badly is the press. The press. I think when you look at you look at any team, the first defender is your furthest forward attacker. And when you have someone like Gabriel Jesus, his ability to create turnovers, get basically players into positions they don't want to be in, and basically destabilize build up for the opposition is so key. And
But
that
don't
is
you think that's slightly different because we've had an improved press? Like, we know that at the
the
beginning of
press
the
has
World
been
Cup,
fine. I just don't
we
think it's been
we
at the level that
struggled.
has been
But
before the
don't you
World
think
Cup.
that there's an issue in terms of the defensive organizations? Because beyond even just the
Because
press,
we've
which
had
we
to
know,
push people more further up to complement the press.
I don't think we've pushed people up to complement the press. We've pushed more people up to destroy a low block. Like, people
That's
double
also
up on our
true.
wingers,
Yeah,
but
no,
so
that's of
we
course
push
also
more.
true. But the thing is when you look at it, of course, the point about changing to 6 to allow a 2-on-2 is fine. I completely agree with that. That's a clear point. But my point is specifically to do with the chances created and the transitions created. Obviously, the reasoning to push the 6 up is to break down that block. 100% agree. That's obviously that's got to be the point. But what you do when you do that is you also create 6 people in a situation when when turnovers occur, which means the press is more active higher up, and when it's beat, it creates more transitions, which is
Well,
what we
do
did
you
against
think
Bournemouth.
then, Chris, is it or do you think it's just a natural progression from having six in there that you're going to face more transitions because you've got one less
It
man
shouldn't be
back,
though. It shouldn't be
or
though. The problem is that we don't have the second athlete in the two. If we had, for example, a Partey and a Declan Rice, for example, we don't concede transitions. It's just that simple. We don't have the personnel to do that 2-2-6 with two big space defenders. We just don't have that. We have enough to do a 2-3-5 with one big space defender. We don't have two big space defenders. If we had two big space defenders, this is not an issue. We crush every team every week doing that. It's not a problem.
well, we've kind of talked about like that's the demand from having a box midfield, right? Like, ultimately, what
Correct.
you're doing is you're stopping them going through the center. You leave your space out wide, and you're going to be forced into those situations. But the one thing is, Chris, I want to get your opinion then. If you're going to be facing those kind of transitions a little bit more clearly, then absolutely you need to make sure that your front players are tracking back. And I think part of the issue that we've got is we've got Trossard being one of those 4 at the back. That's not on long term. You cannot be having Trossard being the one that's recovering. And so the one point that I kind of wanted to make is, despite you having like a structure difference with maybe more transitions, you need to make sure that if you're going to be playing that system, you can't be having your defenders commit high. Gabriel can't be sucked in high, which is kind of what happened in the middle of that transition. Trossard shouldn't be the one that's dropping back. And Martin Odegaard, if you don't win your Solanke battle, no problem, but you need your Thomas Partey or your William Saliba to win that battle higher up. If you let them expose you by traveling deep into your own half, that's when you're going to get outnumbered, because you do have less players. And so the space is going to be in the far side switch. We need to anticipate this, because people aren't just going to stop doubling up on our wingers. We're not going to stop adding 6 players into attack. It's going to be something that's more common. So when we start to recognize that first contact, that first hit has to be successful. Whereas previously in the press, we've relied on second actions being the reason that we cause turnovers. I think the big change in the press is making sure your first tackle has to be spot on. What do you think is kind of the trouble with us increasing the amount of transitions post-World Cup? Is it just growing pains? Or is it something more serious? Because it leads us into our poor defensive set piece, which, again, we concede a goal in the beginning of the second half from a very poor defensive set piece. Is it a concentration thing, or is it a structure issue?
Well, if you look back on that 20th minute chance, the 5 players we had back were Saliba, Trossard, Odegaard, Saka, and Vieira. The 5 players you don't want to be back there, apart from Saliba, obviously. But you don't want those 4 players to be there at all, to be the ones tracking back. We did have a high chance. We were trying to cross the ball into the box. So I understand Gabriel and Partey being there, but the team needs to have a better understanding of, or a better thought of, what will happen when they commit that many men high, because we haven't done well offensively on set pieces as much recently, and we've done a lot worse defensively. So when you're allowing chances in transition like that, it's very dangerous. I think the press has been poorer since, apart from that Eddie turnover. I don't really remember us creating turnovers or forcing them to kick the ball out.
No, that's another point.
Games, I think the intensity has dropped a lot, especially when Eddie's not there. Like, since Eddie's not been there, I don't remember one turnover in Leicester, Everton, or Bournemouth. I don't remember one turnover our front line has made. And then the midfield was a different dynamic. Vieira isn't as good off the ball as Xhaka. Smith Rowe doesn't have the intensity off the bench that Trossard does provide. But even then, our press was very poor, I think. But it will change. It is growing pains. The team is developing. People are being brought in. Like Smith Rowe and Vieira haven't played together at all. And they
One thing I want to ask both of you guys.
Part of 60 minutes.
One thing I want to ask both of you guys, and please just share your thoughts, is with this 2-2-6, do you think it's a fundamental, like, is it a fundamental tactical change that is Mikel's true form? I know you think that. Let the question finished. Or
yes,
is it a short-term solution to create situations that can help us break down these low blocks?
No.
What are we talking about? The shape that we use.
The shape, the dynamic shape.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think for
it's a long-term philosophy,
because we know his thoughts. For 2 years now, we've spoke about this being a natural progression.
Since literally the first video.
Yeah, we're talking about this being a natural progression of the team.
But not just the team. It's a natural progression. It's a natural progression of football. No, like I want to get it out, because it's not just the team. It's not just Mikel Arteta. The reason that it's been predictable is because when you have to ask it, what is the point of positional play? That's what you have to ask yourself. And what is the point of a team that is trying to oppose positional play? They're going to be packing the box in terms of a 4-5-1, low blocks, 4-4-2, whatever variation you want to do. They're going to be adding bodies in the back. And so how do you fundamentally move people around? You need to do it through 2 means. You either do it through dynamic overlaps, or you do it by outnumbering your opponent in a particular zone. Those are kind of the major ways that you're going to be moving an opponent around. Okay. Or you draw a defensive person out of their line, and you need a ball carrying progressor to do that. Now, that is a much less kind of repeatable pattern, because then you're looking at a Hazard-like player who just has qualitative superiority, like a Saka, who just says, go, be brilliant. And you can't rely on that game after game. What you can rely on as a structure is making sure that you're in a position in the pitch that you're offering more players in the box that get you a more opportunity of scoring, but also similarly that can stop transitions in the same way, so that if you do get transitioned on, part of the reason that the Aaron Ramsdale save even happens, by the way, is because the distance to goal is so large. If Billing or Solanke had received that through the center of the pitch, they've got far more angles to release, so they can go right, left. Whereas Solanke and even Billing, when he does receive it, he has one option. It has to go across the face of goal. There is no other option for him. It becomes very predictable to defend against, or if you're a keeper, to understand where that ball is being hit. And so by making sure that you form a box in this 2-2-6, the benefit is not just that you've got more players in the final third, not just that you're controlling transitions, but that when you do lose and you do have a flaw in that system, it's in wide spaces. And from wide spaces to center spaces, the distance to goal is far larger on the wings than it is through the middle of the park. And you have far less angles when you lose it wide than you do through the center of the pitch. So immediately you're taking away space, you're taking away options, and you're taking away the ability for the opposition to defend against you, because you've got to commit more men back. So automatically you create all three of these disadvantages. So that's the big reason for me why, even not even talking Mikel Arteta and broadly, this is going to be the reaction to positional systems. And let me make something also clear beyond that. The reaction to this is going to be a back three again. We're going to go through this cycle quite a bit again. And that's because the 2-2-6 can crash back into a 4-4-2. It can become a 4-5-1 very easily. Your fullbacks drop really deep, no problem. And then you've got your split center striker kind of mold that if you want to join it into a 4-4-2, it's just two up top. Or if you just have 4-5-1, it's just one person behind. So when you start talking about those things in a defensive point of view, how do you beat that? You beat it through width. And so I would expect maybe in 5 years, not quite right now, we're seeing the 2-2-6 emerge, but you're going to see the back three come in to respond to this change. And then you're going to see a lot of coaches adopt that kind of mold. But right now, 4-4-2 is going to be in. You're going to see it a lot more. And the 2-2-6 is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be accustomed to.
Well, yeah, as I was saying, I think the profiles that Mikel has implemented in the team, in defense and in midfield, has always screamed that there will be a pivot on and off the ball, and then two centre backs, athletic, cover spaces very well, elite on the ball. Well, Gabriel isn't as elite on the ball, but you know what I mean. Very good on the ball.
Yeah, no, I totally.
So this progression, I think, was very natural. I was always going to happen. And as we get better, as more teams respect us, we're going to need to take a risk. And the risk I think we're taking is committing another man forward and trusting your parties of the world to control the transitions. And before the World Cup, we were elite at it, really. All the top teams have
we weren't committing that extra man, though, before the World Cup.
Exactly, but I think we got better. We got more respect.
Yeah, 100% we got better.
We got more respect from teams. Bournemouth sat in their box for 90 minutes.
Chris, it's not just Bournemouth, Everton, Villa.
Villa sat in their box.
Newcastle.
So you're going to have to find ways to break them down, and you can't break them down by whipping.
Do you remember the Newcastle review? I mean, guys, when you rewatch this, or you weren't watching this, go back and watch the Newcastle review. We said this exact same thing.
Yeah,
he said we're going to have to get used to teams setting up in a low block against us, doubling up on our fullbacks, really being aggressive in the defensive phase. We said this, and Mikel found a solution, because you have to find a solution. And the next thing I'm going to ask both of you is, well, I'm going to ask Chris first. What do you think is the evolution of Jesus in this team now? Because he's going to come back into this 2-2-6 formation, and I can see you smiling already. If we're going to continue this 2-2-6, what do you think, with Jesus being that shuttler, being that pressing monster, do we go back to the 2-3-5 and trust our system?
I don't I don't think Jesus alone will be enough to create that numerical advantage that we need with 6 men in the front line. So no, I don't think we go back to a 5 with just Jesus. It will be a lot better to control transitions, one, because he's a better presser than what we have right now. So he'll be a lot better. And I think with just this season alone, Jesus won't be enough to bridge the gap between the 6 that we're using now to break down teams and score goals. Because even with the 6, we are creating chances. Like Erdegaard had 11 shots. So we are creating chances, but
I need that brother to think about his shot
using
selection.
them a lot. I won't speak on him because guys think I hate him, but we need
I
to
will. He's been poor. He's been
wait,
poor the last couple games.
please wait, please. I think we need to find a way to bridge the gap, to constantly create chances, but then not lose so much on transition, because you're gonna have to take a risk somewhere, and transitions is where we're taking it. But we need to manage them better. I do think Jesus won't be enough, so we will be a 6. I still think it will be a 2-2-6 or 3-1-6, whatever you want to say. It will still be a 6 just because of the way teams approach the game against us.
And no, like more to really answer the question. I think when you talk about Jesus, you need to understand kind of what kind of a player is he, and then that will guide where do you see him. I think everybody sees the positional fluidity of the squad. There's no use in debating it. We've seen Martinelli be a center forward in quite a few of these matches, recent matches, and will it continue long term? Who knows? But one of the biggest things that you will see is teams won't stop doubling up on our wingers. Teams won't stop camping out in their own back, in their own box, and teams won't stop kind of trying to transition on us through the middle of the park. Like those are things that won't change. Like this is how they're going to try to focus on Arsenal's weaknesses, and so that's going to continue. I think by waiting for like a certain Rice to come in and a different type of midfield, you'll start to see these a lot more clearly in terms of how we're able to implement it. But for the beginning part, Jesus, he'll operate both on the wing and in center forward positions right now. In terms of his position long term, his tight space kind of dribbling has always made me prefer him out wide, and he's done his best stuff in wide spaces. And he's best when he comes deep to offer himself kind of as a extra man in tight spaces to spin and create that kind of gas pedal dynamic. He ups our tempo. That is what we've been missing. Of course, he's a great presser off the ball. Of course, he does some of the other stuff, but that's the benefit of Jesus. But look, I want to kind of continue. So after we've got that set piece goal and we've talked a little bit about philosophy, we go into the second half and we're 2-0 down and we've got this huge comeback ability on us.
Second goal was after half time.
We're 1-0 down and we had a lot of chances, like the Erdegaard chances. He had 2 shots. Well, after Erdegaard's and Saka's 3 shots on target in the first 5 minutes, we didn't get another one in the first half. I wanted to ask, before we go into the second, why did you guys think we couldn't test the keeper for 40 minutes of the first half?
Poor shot selection, I think, is the main thing. I think we were too concerned with creating wide overloads. There was nothing central. Everything was wide. We weren't we're not pushing. We didn't really push anyone into the box enough at all. I feel like we were way too concerned with creating the chance instead of finishing the chance, and at times we were very slow, especially on the left. That was when the ball was right in front of me, and I felt like obviously Tomiyasu had a poor half, was unable to really. And this is a thing I wanted to ask both of you. I think that with Tomiyasu, he is more adept to acting in the 2-3-5 than he is in the 6. I just don't see him being that final third operator that can really, change the game in the way Ben White did. And it's unfortunate. I think obviously we're doing the Tomiyasu centre back switch, which I think it's got to happen. Otherwise, he's not staying at the club as a right back. It's just not going to happen.
Well, no, I look, what didn't happen, Chris, the big issue is Fabio Vieira and Zinchenko. No one's really talked about it, both on the timeline and in general, but, Zinchenko operating more in a high and wide function. We tried to add this 2-2-6, and he wasn't creating enough chances, and him and Fabio Vieira were running into each other in terms of some of the zones that they prefer. I think a lot of people wanted that dynamic, and what we did miss was the second ball retention. That was very clear. We were kind of not doing well with second ball, so it became a really frustrating game in that regard.
Did you not feel we over-recycle on the left-hand side, though? We over-recycled a
But
lot.
part of the reason why is because Fabio Vieira reduces some of the angles in terms of he can receive on the left-hand side. So they both want to do the same thing. When Zinchenko was high and wide, it was a little bit, more difficult for him to operate under that scenario. We have a better high and wide option on the bench. I don't know why we didn't do it if that's the dynamic that we want to do. We all know that's the case. But then when Emile Smith-Rowe did come in, part of the issue is you've got two people on that side that both want to come to touch, and Emile Smith-Rowe is somebody that's constantly on the left wing in terms of how he plays it, is he will play that touchline role. But ideally, you need to get him inside in terms of combining with players to burst through the middle of the park, and we weren't doing that. And so that's why in the first half we were struggling to create. You mentioned Tommy. He was a big problem. We didn't have Ben's dynamism there, so when they were doubling up on our wingers, it was frustrating. And so we know about that, and we made kind of these changes in the second half, that tweak. The Ben White substitute, and then of course, the 2-2-6 kind of mold.
What did you make of Tommy in the final third, though? That was the other question I had.
No, we've talked about him in the final third quite a bit.
He's just not good enough.
Like
man.
I've told people his crossing variety is reduced. I think he's got excellent ability to receive. We all know that he can receive the ball in any angle, but he can't progress the ball in any angle, and he's not able to provide crossing variety. Whether that's a pinned half space cross, whether that's a cut back, like he has opportunities to do it, and he makes decent decisions about what cross to do, but his execution of those crossing is very inconsistent, and he doesn't have the running power to create that dynamic. So typically when he does receive, he cuts and he checks back, he recycles. Ben doesn't do that. He'll run onto the ball quite a bit. Ben can check if he wants to, but the big reason is Ben offers himself as an option, and he'll keep running and make that run. Tommy doesn't have the ability to do that. That immediately.
That's the main reason I asked the question, because I wanted you to speak about Zinchenko, because I thought you were dying to speak about him. And I did think the left-hand side, there was a lack of dynamism, even when Emile came on, because the way he creates from the left-hand side is by receiving, trying to bait the right back, and pass inside to burst between the right back and centre mid.
Yeah.
That pass wasn't there. Vieira and Zinchenko don't dribble or aren't big space runners. So even if there was a big space in front of them, they wouldn't use it. So the dynamics on the left-hand side were very weird.
I will say, though, Vieira did break lines with his dribbling a few times in that first half. And he was like,
well, he's a technical player. He's got quality, right? Like he'll do that, but the dynamic between him and
isn't to dribble.
Yeah, no. I completely agree with you. I'm just saying that was something I did want to highlight on the pod, that he had a couple of like dribbles where he was just like, all right, go on, have a go, because I just felt like there wasn't enough dynamism on, as you mentioned, during that first half on that left hand side, because there was no movement. People weren't rotating in and out, and it was clunky, because everyone legit, you have three very similar profiles in one zone, and it just doesn't work.
I think that to answer to Tommy starting was White might not be 100% fit, and just billing really the aerial duels, because he tried to pin himself a lot earlier, and then they scored, so he didn't need to. But that really was
the one thing that I did want to talk about, and shocked it's going to lead us to the second goal, because we need to move on, guys. It's like almost 15 minutes in, and we're still on the 2-0 down. But listen,
we're 1-0 now.
The what? No, we already talked about the 2-0 down. It was like a poor defensive set piece. We've already talked about it. So in terms of our offensive set pieces, there's one thing that you said, Chris, earlier on in the stream. I don't know if I agree. I actually think our offensive set pieces have been quite good, and I've noticed something very different than our offensive set pieces. We've created a lot of space at the top of the box in our recent offensive set pieces that are very different for a shot, for a pass, whether we're a free man. And what we do is we crash the 6-yard box, and we make it seem like we've got an option short that in the end goes long, and we create space for somebody to attack the penalty box. And, for this goal, look, Emile Smith-Rowe is unmarked, guys, at the top of the box. And this isn't the first time. Thomas Partey has used it for a first-time shot quite a bit. Even beyond that, when you're looking at kind of the Reece Nelson goal in terms of how we end up creating as well.
Yeah, don't you think that going short consistently, or it does create a shot on the edge of the box? Zinchenko scored, Reece scored, we nearly scored, but in this game as well, Erdegaard nearly scored. But Don't you think it's
Wasn't the Jorginho one, wasn't that a recycled second phase
Yeah, it
corner?
was. But I'm saying, don't you think it leads to the transitions, and it is a risk you have to take, but that's what
It's
led to the
potentially a
2-0
risk, but it makes
chance.
us more dynamic on set pieces. It makes us more variable because it's much more difficult to
It's a
mark that.
trade-off, Chris. It's a
Um,
trade-off.
and I think it's not just that it creates more transitions because your center back should be able to close that ball in. It actually forces the opposition back into a deeper block. Like if you go back, everybody's camped in the 6 yard box. From a
Mm.
Bournemouth perspective, but even Arsenal, we don't commit as many bodies, and there's no reason that somebody shouldn't be picking up back post. And it's not the first time. The Jorginho you mentioned, the Thomas Partey, the Zinchenko. We've done a lot of set pieces where we free men at the top of the box in order to offer a greater space for a goal. And that's very different from last season when we used to play near post. And so that's been something that Nicholas Jover has absolutely changed. I think that we're a lot more variable on offensive set pieces. The defensive set pieces, I think we've been poor. I think that we've really struggled to defend those quite well. And I think Nicholas
Not
Jover needs
just
to go
corners,
back to the
bro.
drawing board.
I think on free kicks as well, we've been struggling. They nearly scored in just before their corner. Like,
Yeah.
what led to the corner was a free kick where they nearly scored. So we do need to fix that there.
And I think it's personnel related. Like the one thing, if you do go back, we have mismatches up all the time. Like for example, the Everton, like when the first time the defensive set piece worries happened with Tarkovsky and the header, there's no reason that Martin Odegaard should be the one marking Tarkovsky. And
No, there
you
really
know,
isn't.
we've done that a lot where the personnel of the
It's
matchups
worse
that we're
than that,
doing.
mate. It's Odegaard and Jorginho on the back post.
Yeah, it's just it's not something that we should be doing. But
Can I wanted to ask you guys something. This is something I wanted to ask you guys before. Well, you weren't watching it live, but so more to Chris. When we're 2-0 down, how is it watching? Like, what is going through your mind? What's the thought process when we go 2-0 down?
Oh,
Like,
well,
what in the moment?
we're gonna win. Like that. Me simply
It
like
was legit the same in the stadium.
watching the
Legit.
game because the way they scored their goals. Like their second goal was a mismatch on the corner. Ben White got bullied at the near post, and then Thomas Partey couldn't keep up. I didn't think they could do that again. And the first goal, they couldn't do it again.
They couldn't.
So I was very confident. I think they had 4 shots, 4 on target. Like all their shots, they were either going to put them on target or not shoot. So I was very confident they weren't going to score again. So it was just for me, just a thing about picking our shots and making subs. He made a sub earlier, a lot earlier than he usually does.
Yeah.
He made a different sub. He probably was forced because of the injuries, but it was a necessity. I did think we score, and then this just leads on to Reece Nelson, really, because I think he was a big change and a big reason why I was confident, because I saw someone very urgent with their first touch, very willing to stay touchline. Like, I don't think he really left the touchline, and when he did, Zinchenko was willing to be there. So yeah, it was nice to see a difference.
well,
I mean,
just to round out the set piece talk, because we do have to get to the second goal, guys. Like it's been almost an hour in, but the one movement that we do is we start a lot higher this season in our set piece. So we've started at the penalty spot and we crashed the box, the 6 yard box, quite a bit. We haven't been doing that last season. Last season, what we did is we focused on a Gabriel or a Thomas Partey near post header into the mix zone, and we started in the 6 yard box. Here, we're making banana runs from the penalty spot in so that we can force people to bring with us. It drags everybody deep into their box in the 6 yard box, and it leaves space in that penalty spot for a cutback to a Jorginho, a Thomas Partey near post, or in this goal, an Emile Smith Rowe. And so when we send in the cross into kind of the mix zone and the keeper punches it out, Emile is already running in, guys. Like he's anticipating that, and we play for that. By the way, we play for the second ball to be spilt at the top of the box. And look, it's a great pass from Emile. And he knows what he's doing. It's not a hopeful ball. He knows that he has to put it in back post, and there's going to be somebody running in to make a mark. And look, Thomas Partey scores, and it goes 2-1. What did you guys think kind of the second goal a little bit more? Because then we can talk about Reece Nelson's kind of cameo a bit more.
I mean, it doesn't matter about open play or corners. We have this ability to drag defensive lines back and create space for ourselves. I think it's such a key philosophy point that Mikel has put an emphasis on. It's a point of emphasis in every attack. If we can manage to draw the defensive line back to their own goal, we can create space for ourselves, whether it be a cutback, maybe it's a cross, whatever, it's a corner. Creating that space around the penalty box in that zone 14 area above it it creates the ability to really attack and attack well, because you have people that are able to make those runs, as you mentioned, the banana runs, and then either you're scoring yourself or you're creating chances for others. So lovely.
Yeah, on the second goal, I think, yeah, Partey did create that. He got a lucky bounce. Was a nice fake shot. He like the centre mid really believed that nice fake shot, and then was
Yeah,
able
he did.
to get the bounce back, and then play the pass to Reece, and then just quality from Reece, first touch, and then puts it across on a plate on his left foot. Good finish from White, actually.
It didn't look like it went in, and until
Good finish from White. It was a great
they
time for
have
him to
this
get the
weird
first
thing at
goal.
the stadium. I don't know what it is, but they have this weird thing where it's like this whenever we score. I don't know what that means, but if that means something to you guys, I don't know what it is. But yeah, um,
It,
but
it
yeah,
was
when
it was great from Reece. Like that was his one of it. It was two of his first four touches on the pitch.
yeah,
So it was quality from him, and just
Well,
not many.
immediately, like Chris, look, it's great piece of play by Thomas Partey, but I think he shows exactly why he had a very good game himself. Like it's direct. The first touch that he does, by the way, it's a weak foot that he carries in the same run of his pitch. Like it doesn't go to his left foot immediately. Like he uses his right foot to carry the ball with momentum and set himself up for the cut back with his left foot. It's underrated piece of skill that I don't think a lot of people are going to see right now, but it controls the ball and sets him up to do it all in one action so he doesn't have to cut back. And I think that's been the difference with Reece. Reece of old would cut back and force it onto his strong foot. Whereas this Reece is taking it in stride and in one motion making the cross. That's what makes the goal. He's
Much better.
aggressive in 1v1s.
Yeah, the decision making was a lot better from Reece of 2020.
Hmm.
I think that he just closed off the pitch. Like he didn't think about cutting in. He didn't. Maybe he thought about it, but he didn't look like he thought about it at all. He
No,
just
he
touched
didn't.
on the outside of his right foot and played it perfectly across the box. Because even if White, say the keeper gets there, the ball bounces straight back to White anyway. So he does score anyways. So he put White in a great position to score, and it was a great time for him to score like important goal. His what was that his first? I think that is his first Arsenal goal. So it was great, and for Reece, it was just perfect for his confidence to just go into the game because you already get an assist in less than 5 minutes.
Well, it's tough because I think, like, look, we've talked a lot about Reece on the channel, and it was completely mentality, and we talked about his aggression. I mean, Reece is absolutely two-footed, and he's one of the best players in tight spaces in the squad. He's got insanely quick feet. From a pure technical point of view, he is absolutely incredible, and Mikel's made note of that. Reece can be whatever he wants to be.
2019.
Yeah, since 2019, he's talked about Reece, and I tend to agree. A lot of it's mentality, but if he's going to continue to be aggressive like this, then I have no problem in terms of Reece staying. Like, I think he's going to be a very important part of the squad, and he's going to have an Eddie-like impact on the squad because now that he's back fit, he's going to have a run of games that he's going to be able to kind of imprint himself and to be a part of the comeback in such a big way. We'll talk about his goal at the end and like very soon, but to come on and do an assist and to get a goal like that, it's incredible in half an hour. And I think it wasn't just that, but it was his play. He was a lot more aggressive. He was a lot more involved, and he wasn't as kind of safe in the left half
It
space, which
just
is
goes
what a
back to
lot of
what I was saying in the
people.
beginning, though, George. It was going back to that. We have missed a lane 5 aggressor for I don't know how many weeks now, and we've been all saying the solution comes from left back, and I think we still all do. But having someone in that lane 5 who's aggressive, that comes in, creates something, puts something in the box, is able to take on their man, be good on either foot, be able to create a cross, be able to create a cutback. It's so crucial. It's so crucial to have someone aggressive that can start wide and come inside and be creative and not just be a big space runner that can be that run behind threat, which obviously Marcelli does as a left wing. But I think having that creative option is perfect. You need that. You need that ability to be able to create for other people. And one thing I don't think we have discussed is the impact of having. I just think maybe it showed him. It showed Mikel on the pitch that having players in wide areas that are comfortable in wide areas has to be something that he has to see. He can't not see that because we haven't had that in a long time. And you look
But
at
it's not
how
just people
Stevenberg was
comfortable in
chatting
wide
at Chelsea.
spaces because we've had Trossard there. Like it's not just that it's that running power. That is what it is. You need to have somebody that's able to combine in tight spaces, but also offer that separation from a physical standpoint. And Reece can do that. That's why he worked. And that's why in the first half it wasn't working because you had Zinchenko and Fabio Vieira both taking up positions high and wide, but they didn't have the physical ability to create that separation. So it became all too predictable. It became the same type of passing. And so that's what Reece offers you. He offers you an ability to go in and out. He doesn't mind. He can continue his run. He doesn't need to combine in tight spaces. He can create separation if he wants to. And that's the threat that we need. Whether that's left back, a left winger, I don't really care. But I need my lane 5 person to be dynamic with his running power, but offer a variety of solutions, both in passing, in an underlap, or in an overlap. That's all that it is. But going beyond that, guys, we're going to very quickly have a VAR conversation. As far as I'm concerned, it's ridiculous. There's a lot of opportunities for a handball. We know it. We didn't let it affect us. That is literally my point of view. I don't have a technical point of view to watch it. I want to open it up to you guys if we really need to have a big discussion on it. We all know we should have had penalties.
We've said it before, and I've said it before time and time again. We're gonna have to keep winning this in spite of the referees who are there to help us and there to manage the game. We should have had a penalty. They were stopping on the wrong ones. Like he was taking time on VAR on the less on the much more debatable ones, like the clear-cut bends that we should have had in the first half, where the ball literally bounced on the player's arm alone with no contest, no push, nothing. It wasn't given. So for me, I knew we wouldn't get it. Like I was saying in the 45th minute, half
We were
time.
saying in the stadium, man.
We're not
In the
getting
in the stadium, it was legit. Just stop wasting our time. Let's go on with it
like
because you're not giving up anyway.
A player could have been punched in the box, and we were not going to win that game on a pen.
No.
So
well, actually, ironic that you say that because in the build-up to the third goal, a player was punched in the back, and it was Ben White. I don't know if a lot of people know. Everybody, the celebration with Ben White, kind of like celebrating in front of Neto. It got a lot of traction, but I don't know if a lot of people knew. But the corner before that, he was getting punched in the head by Neto. That's why he did that. And so, in terms of the goal, look, it's beautiful technique by Reece. That's what it is. Again, we start our penalty box run. We start there. Everybody crashes the box again to try to draw space. And the second ball goes out to Reece in identical fashion that Emile Smith-Rowe gets space. But this is all on Reece's technical ability. In order for you to get a ball and then shift it onto your left foot and strike it that clean with that much power and that accuracy in that moment, understanding it's the last kick of the game, it's phenomenal. One of the biggest things that I think Reece has struggled with, by the way, is the fact that he was the Hale End guy. He wasn't just a nice guy coming up. He was the guy. He was a superstar as far as Hale End was concerned. And he was convinced to be the one to lead us to other things. And I don't think he's been able to write an Arsenal story in the first team. He's got a great story with the youth team, but he's never once had a moment with the first team. This for me is a moment, and it's been building all season, right? Like he's had moments, but this is the first time he is responsible for a win, and I think it's gonna do him the world of confidence going forward. It's just a ridiculous piece of skill, and I think it goes under the radar for how incredible that weak foot finish is. Because it has to travel a large distance, guys. That's not an easy finish to do. So kudos to him. You were going to say, Karan, what are your thoughts?
All I'm going to say is what Bukayo Saka was for this current this current people growing up. Reece was for the one before. He was the original star boy. He was the one that was going to be the halo and poster boy. He was the one. He was the one. He was the one that everyone thought was going to be that guy. And to see him on his weak foot just pull out a finish of such technical quality, such calmness, poise, I couldn't be happier. Because I remember 2018, 2019, hearing about this kid called Reece Nelson, hearing about this kid that was going to be that guy, was ambipedal, great runner, could beat a man, could score a goal. He was going to be that guy. And like for this current gen will be probably Cozy Dubry, for example. Like he was that mold. He was the guy, and I can't be. I'm not. I can't express how happy I am for him. It's a moment in time.
It's a great one,
And
and so I think ultimately, in the end, you end up winning the game 3-2. And Chris, I want to go to you, like for final thoughts. Like, what did you think of the game in preparation? We've got Sporting CP coming up next. We're definitely gonna have a preview and a review out for you guys. But Reese has an opportunity to kind of have a good 4 or 5 game run in the team, not just from a Europa League standpoint, but also in general. And so, what did you feel kind of coming out of the game 3-2? What was your overall thoughts on it in general in terms of the title race and stuff?
Well, as soon as the game was done, I wasn't thinking. I was just screaming. At first, it was just happiness, elation. But then when I calmed down, it was really just 12 big games. We need to win. Well, to not make it a discussion, we need to win 10 out of 12. Including City. City being one of them on a draw. We win 10 out of 12, then there's not a debate. It's possible. We've done it before this season. Is it hard? Definitely. We have to play Chelsea. We have to play Newcastle. We have to play City. So there will be hard
Liverpool.
games in the Liverpool away. So 4 of the hardest games right now in the league. We have to play. So it's not going to be easy. We still have Europa. But I think on Reese, he was incredible. I made a comp on his touches. They were very good. And I think before the injury, he was growing in the team after Nottingham Forest. He didn't really get subbed on, but he was definitely involved. So I do think in Europa, it's going to be a good chance for him to show himself. With Trossard out, he could start. You never know. So I think it will be a good chance for him to prove himself a bit, guarantee that next contract. It's obvious Arteta loves him, and it's great for us because, as I said, in April we have 3 very tough games, 4 very tough games throughout April. April's probably our hardest month of the season, so we're going to need everyone we can get to play Europa, to come off the bench to impact the games. So he will be necessary, not just him. Emil will be necessary. Everyone will be. They will play. It will be nice to see Kyrgios play versus Sporting. But yeah, and on that, yes. I've been saying it since the 15, even before, I've been saying it for 2 years that we can win the league. But do I think we can win the league this season? Yeah. What about you, George? Do you?
I don't know yet. I still need to think about Gabriel Jesus' kind of injury return. I really think it's
If
as
he doesn't come back, you think it's a no?
no. If he doesn't come back, no. If you don't have Gabriel Jesus for April and May, then no, you can't win the league. Um, and and that's going to be key for me, and not just him, but making sure that Emile Smith Rowe is fit. We need not only just that, we need another superstar in attack, but we also need a depth option for me, whether that's Reese or Emile Smith Rowe. If both of those two are out and we don't have one of them to call upon, we need a dynamic to change off the bench for me. So I'm still waiting to see how Gabriel Jesus kind of returns. I will say the next 4 games are super important that give you the breathing space kind of in April to kind of lose a game or two. And so the biggest issue is making sure that we gain maximum points between now and the international break. And then, the next one's kind of Sporting. But I want to give Curran a chance for you to kind of just say last minute thoughts quickly, not a rant, but quickly, because then we have to sign off and do announcements for previews and reviews.
Well, I mean, look, it's a very emotional game. I think something I don't think I'll ever forget. But in terms of last minute thoughts, I'm with Chris. I think we do win the league. I think I said it at Liverpool. I think Liverpool home was when I started saying we're going to win the league. In terms of Cesc returning, I think he's a very intelligent player, as George mentioned when we talked off air. But I think it will be interesting to see how he's integrated into the coaching setup and what he does. I think he has a very interesting take in terms of individualism versus positional play. I think that would be very interesting to see. Gabriel Jesus is going to come back as well, but in terms of this specific game, just believe, and just whenever anyone who watches this, everyone in that stadium that is in the home supporting end believes. So just believe, and that's what I'm gonna say.
We will talk a lot about this. Don't worry. We will have transfer pods to get through. We've got an international break coming up, so we're going to have a lot of content coming for you. So don't worry. I will give you one hint. It's the surfer emoji. But in terms of this game,
by the way,
huh?
that is not a good hint at all. By the way,
It's an excellent hint. If you know who that player is, yes, fine. He's Portuguese. There. In terms of the game, I think it was phenomenal. I think it's a moment in time. I think it's something that we're absolutely, there you go, you got it. You know, I think one of the best thing about this game is coming back twice. I really love that. You know, again, I couldn't catch the game, and the one thing I quoted was the Orbinho tweet in terms of us coming back the most of any team in the Premier League from losing positions, which is 15 points. That's not insignificant, guys. That is absolutely massive. And when you have a look at the away table, it's incredible. We're something on 31 points, and City are on 26. Like, that's a big gap. That is substantial. And so you got to make sure that you're maximizing that. I'm with Chris in terms of being very excited to see what Kiwior has to offer, but then we are drifting into preview conditions with Sporting, which we will get to, you guys. So, guys, look, yes, let's all have a chance to laugh at Manchester United. We will have a chance to do that.
That was a joke, by the way.
Performance
is a joke of title contenders. If they're going to win the league next year, quadruple,
absolutely
7 goals.
Incredible, and scenes of glorious emotions. But guys, no, thank you so much for sticking with us, guys. Before we go, if you could drop a like on the channel, it really helps out the video, and the channel, in fact. So if you could drop a like, that would be awesome. And then make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. You hit the bell for notifications to know when, in fact, we do upload. So in terms of all the boys' socials, you can find me at GeorgeV_AFC. You can find CK at CKFTBL, and of course Curran at CurranBOP. And we're Ball Over Passion here on YouTube. We're at BOP Footy on the Twitter. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. And we're going to be back with you guys for a preview of Sporting. Looking forward to that game. And it's Sporting CP, not Sporting L. We shouldn't be doing that. Apparently, they don't like that. So make sure you guys say it right. But thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Peace, everybody. Have a good one.
Peace.